The Capybara Guardians, The Valley of the Vanished, an adventure series by Marc Finks. Chapter 1, The Ancient Map. "Hey Carlos, come catch this fish," Camilla shouted. Her whiskers twitched with excitement. She splashed into the bright, sunny waters of the wetlands. Her brown fur glistened in the sun. Carlos had darker fur. He watched his sister from the bank. "Be careful, Camilla. The water is deeper than it looks," he called out. Camilla ignored him. She dove into the water. She swam near an ancient mangrove tree. Something strange caught her eye. There was something half buried in the squishy mud. It looked like... Was it a branch? No, smoother. A scrap of old cloth? "Carlos, come here. Look what I've found," she called out, a tremor in her voice. Carlos padded over. Camilla dug her claws into the wet earth, pushing aside the mud and leaves. The object began to take shape. Frayed edges, colours washed pale by time. Her heart pounded. Could it be? "The storm last night must have unburied it," Camilla whispered, more to herself than Carlos. "What did you find?" Carlos asked, leaning in so close his whiskers brushed the object. "It's a map," Camilla exclaimed. Her voice rose with a mix of wonder and disbelief. "And it looks really, really old. I wonder where it leads." Strange symbols covered the map. It hinted at long-lost paths and hidden secrets. Carlos and Camilla looked at each other. They began to discuss what the symbols might mean. "Maybe it's a clue to hidden treasure," Camilla suggested. "Or a secret place no one has seen for ages," Carlos added. "Should we follow it?" Camilla asked. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. Carlos hesitated. He always felt nervous about going somewhere new. He looked into Camilla's eyes and took a deep breath. "Yes," he agreed. "Let's see where this map goes." Camilla spread the map on a flat stone. She traced the lines and the symbols. "Look, Carlos, this path goes through the Whispering Woods," she said. She pointed at a bunch of tree symbols. Carlos leaned in. His snout nearly touched the map. "The Whispering Woods? I've heard they're full of secret paths," he said. "Yeah, we need to cross this river next," Camilla continued. Her paw pointed to a wavy line. "But no one can cross that river," Carlos argued. "It's too fast and deep. Remember those two capybaras? They fell in the river a couple of years ago and..." Camilla's whiskers shook with bravery. "We'll find a way. We're adventurers, aren't we?" she replied with a grin. Carlos nodded, a smile breaking through his worry. "After the river, we climb a mountain," he said. His voice grew stronger with excitement. He pointed to a triangular shape on the map. "The trail ends in the Valley of the Vanished." Camilla looked at Carlos. "Have you heard of it?" Carlos shook his head. His ears perked up. "No, but it sounds mysterious. I wonder what has vanished." Camilla's eyes danced with wonder. Maybe it's a place of ancient stories or something magical waiting to be found. The siblings looked at each other. Their hearts pounded with excitement. The map wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a doorway to a world of adventure, a world they were eager to explore. "Let's start our adventure tomorrow at sunrise," said Camilla. Carlos nodded, his eyes shining with bravery. "We'll be ready for anything the map has in store for us." The wetlands seemed to hum with the promise and adventure. Carlos and Camilla were beginning a new journey. It would be beyond their wildest dreams. Chapter 2, The Whispering Woods. Carlos and Camilla gazed in awe at the Whispering Woods. The trees stretched high above them. Their leaves rustled in the wind. Sunbeams peeked through. They created a magical dance of light and shadow. Camilla's heart seemed to beat in rhythm with the mysterious woods. "Are you ready for this?" Camilla asked, turning to Carlos with a wide grin. "I think so. No one really comes into these woods, but..." Carlos nodded. "Let's see what secrets these woods hold." As they travelled deeper, the sun's rays shone through the leaves. The woods were alive with wonders. Beautiful butterflies danced around them. Curious squirrels peeked from behind the trees. Camilla's laughter echoed as she chased a butterfly. Her spirit was as free as the wind. Carlos pointed at a family of rabbits. They were hiding behind a huge tree. Look, he pointed. We never see rabbits like those in the wetlands. Wow, it's like a whole other world, Camilla whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Carlos nodded. It's beautiful, but we need to be careful. Remember, we're far from home. As they travelled deeper, the path became less clear. Twisting vines and thick bushes made it hard to see where they were going. The ground was soft and mossy. Suddenly Camilla stopped. Look, Carlos, she exclaimed, pointing at a tree trunk. It was covered in symbols, carved deep into the bark. The shapes looked like animals, trees, and weird lines. Carlos peered at the symbols, his forehead wrinkled in concentration. The path ends here. Maybe these mean something. He pulled out the map, comparing it to the symbols. Camilla traced a bird-shaped symbol with her paw. This one looks like the heron we saw by the river, she said. Carlos nodded, looking at the map. And this tree symbol matches the one on our map. But what about these other marks? They tried to match more symbols with the map, but nothing seemed to fit. Camilla tapped on the spiral symbol. Maybe it's a riddle, like follow the spiral or something. Carlos shook his head. I don't think so. Look, this symbol here is the sun, and it's next to the tree on the map. Maybe it's telling us to go towards the sun. They followed the direction of the sun. Soon they noticed more symbols on the trees. It's like a trail, Camilla said, her voice filled with excitement. They followed the symbols. Sometimes they would get confused and take a wrong turn. Then they would backtrack the way that they had come. Each time they found the right symbol, it felt like a victory. This one looks like a snake, Carlos said, pointing to a curvy line on a tree. So maybe we follow this curvy path here. They took a path that zigzagged through thick bushes. After a few minutes, they realized it was a dead end. Oops, not this way, Camilla giggled. They went back and tried a new path. They followed a symbol that looked like a raindrop. It led them to a small stream. The shallow water flowed over smooth stones. Carlos's eyes lit up. Look, the symbols lead across the stream, he said. They carefully stepped on the stones to cross the stream. The path opened up before them. The symbols on the trees seemed to cheer them on. We did it! We solved the puzzle, Camilla exclaimed, leaping up and down. Carlos smiled, feeling proud. We are really good at this. The Whispering Woods can't trick us. Their excitement grew. They realized they were no longer following a map. They were solving mysteries. They had turned their adventure into a thrilling game. Chapter 3. The Bridge of Courage. The woods were alive with curious creatures. A squirrel ran up a tree. It dropped an acorn that bounced near Carlos's paw. Camilla laughed and chased after the playful squirrel. Hey, wait up, Carlos yelled, forgetting his worries for a minute. They came to a wide stream, the water rushing by. It looked impossible to cross. We can't swim that, Carlos said. His fur prickled a little. Camilla's eyes sparkled. Look, over there, branches. We can build a bridge. They dragged branches and rocks, piling them by the water. Should we put them sideways? Camilla asked. Carlos put 2 in the water, but they floated away. No good. Should we put rocks on top of them to hold them down? Camilla tugged on some water lilies growing nearby. Maybe we could use these to tie it all together. They tried again and again. Mud splattered in their faces. Stones slipped from their grasp. Carlos's heart sank with each attempt. Could they do this? Was this adventure too big for them? Just as he was ready to give up, Camilla's voice rang out. We should use the mud to stick it all together. She pointed to their muddy paws. Her eyes shone with stubborn determination. Back they went, scooping up squishy mud and smearing it all over the branches. Finally, they had it. A messy bridge of branches, rocks, and mud lay across the water. Camilla touched the first branch, her paw shaking a little. This is it, Carlos, she whispered, scared but excited. Carlos squeezed her shoulder, trying to hide his own fear. We built this together, he said. He took the first step. The branch creaked. He almost jumped back, but then he said, "It's okay, come on." Camilla nodded and took a deep breath. The stream gurgled below, reminding her how hard this was. Halfway across, a branch slipped. "Carlos," she gasped, scrambling to stay on. Carlos jumped back, his paw touching hers. "I've got you, Camilla. It's just a few more steps," he encouraged. His own fear disappeared as he tried to be strong for his sister. They moved slowly, step by step. Finally, they made it to the other side. They collapsed on the ground, laughing and out of breath. "We did it, Carlos." "We really did it," Camilla exclaimed. Her earlier fear had changed to pride. Her eyes sparkled with the thrill of victory. Carlos lay beside her. He let out a long breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "We did it, Camilla. We faced our fears, together." He looked at the bridge behind them. It showed how brave they could be. As the sky turned orange and pink, they found a clearing. Setting up camp felt like a big grown-up thing to do. Carlos tried to be brave, but his voice trembled a bit. "This is our first night away from home." Camilla nodded, a tiny frown on her face. "But we have each other. We'll keep watch and stay safe." As night fell, the forest changed. The stars peeked through the treetops. There were so many of them. "Do you see that group of stars?" Camilla asked, pointing towards the sky. "It looks like a huge bear." Carlos, following her gaze, smiled. "That's Ursa Major, and over there is Orion, the hunter." The stars were like old friends, sharing their light in the darkness. "What do you think we will find tomorrow?" Camilla asked curiously. Carlos's whiskers twitched in thought. "I think that huge river is next, but if we're careful, then maybe we'll be okay." Camilla laughed quietly. "We will be amazing, Carlos. As long as we work together, I think we can do anything." A rustle in the bushes made them freeze. A fox peeked out, eyes shining. They both froze. They remembered they'd learnt about foxes. "It's just curious," Carlos whispered. "Stay still." The fox sniffed around for a few moments. Then, as quietly as it had come, it disappeared back into the woods. They lay on their bed of leaves, whispering about their day. An owl hooted far away. Soon they were asleep. Morning brought a mix of relief and excitement. "We did it, Carlos. We spent the night in the whispering woods," Camilla exclaimed, pride shining in her eyes. Carlos grinned, feeling braver than he had the day before. "We're real adventurers now. Let's see what today brings." They left the woods behind. The trees had been their first test, and they'd passed. Chapter 4. The River Riddle. The sun rose high over the woods. Carlos and Camilla held the ancient map in their paws as they approached the sound of rushing water. They found themselves at the bank of a wide river. Wetland creatures called it the River Riddle. The water danced and swirled before them. There were stories of capybaras finding their way across the river, but most capybaras usually ended up falling into the river. They were swept far downstream. There, the river became much more dangerous. "Look," Camilla pointed at the map. "We have to get to the other side." Carlos stared at the river. It was so fast. A shiver ran down his spine. How will we ever cross? Stories say the stones throw anyone who steps on them into the river. "Look at those, Carlos," she squeaked. Then, without another word, she ran to the water. The first stone, the one with the leaf, wobbled under her paw. She almost fell in. "Camilla, be careful," Carlos exclaimed. He jumped forward to pull her back to safety. "If we can't find a safe way across, then it's better to give up." Camilla nodded and rubbed her arm. Her earlier excitement was replaced with caution. Carlos turned his attention back to the map. His eyes narrowed. He noticed something strange in the bottom corner of the map. The same 4 symbols that were on the rocks. "Look here, Camilla." Carlos pointed to the symbols on the map. "This isn't just a map, it's also a riddle." Camilla's eyes lit up with understanding. "That's it. The stones are part of the puzzle." Carlos hesitated. The first symbol is the sun, he finally said. This time, Camilla approached the stones more gently. She stepped onto the stone marked with a sun. To her relief, it didn't move. It felt as solid as the ground. Be really careful, Camilla, Carlos cautioned. His voice was tight with anxiety. The current looks stronger here. If you fall in... Camilla nodded. She bit her lip as she looked at the stones. She stepped onto the second one. It was marked with a moon symbol. It was as solid as the first one, but the swirling water around her paws made her dizzy. Slow and steady, Carlos called. His fur was on end, watching her every step. I got it, she said, but the next stone wobbled. Her heart pounded as she fought to keep her balance. Camilla, Carlos gasped, ready to jump in after her. She scrambled, then it was still. I'm okay, she said, her voice shaky. But the stones kept getting trickier. One even splashed water onto her feet, making her shiver. Then she saw the star stone, but it was too far to step. I can't reach it, she whispered, fear twisted in her belly. Carlos bit his lip, studying the map. You have to jump. You can do it. Camilla crouched low. The river roared below her. Could she really do it? For a moment, all she wanted was to be safe at home, but Carlos was watching. She took a deep breath and leaped. The air seemed to freeze. Was she going to fall? Then, thump! She landed hard, but the stone held. Your turn, she yelled, heart pounding. Across the river, Carlos looked tiny and scared. Carlos took a deep breath, the same one Camilla must have taken moments ago. Was this bravery or foolishness? The question hung in the air as he leaped. He landed safely next to Camilla. They shared a brief, shaky smile. When they made it to the other side, they collapsed to the ground. They both panted and laughed in relief. We did it, Carlos shouted. A wide grin spread across his face. Camilla, still shaky, said, That was the scariest thing ever, but her eyes sparkled. After a rest, they stood. We're really doing it, she whispered, looking around at the strange new forest. Carlos nodded, searching the shadows. Yeah, but we need to camp before dark. The forest buzzed with new sounds as they walked. Crickets, owls, things they didn't know. It was scary, but also exciting. The last light of day was disappearing. Over there, Carlos pointed to a small clearing. It looks like a good spot. They began gathering leaves and branches to set up camp. As they worked, Camilla's thoughts drifted back to the river. That was scary today, wasn't it? She asked. Carlos, piling up leaves to make a bed, paused and looked at her. It was, but we did it together. That's what matters. In the growing darkness, they sat side by side. They ate a simple meal of fruits and nuts they had gathered along the way. The surrounding forest buzzed with the sounds of nocturnal animals. It sounded both eerie and beautiful. They lay down and looked at the night sky through the clearing in the trees. Camilla's whiskers twitched happily. There are so many stars, she whispered. Her voice was full of wonder. Are they the same stars we have in our night sky? Carlos pointed towards the sky. We haven't gone that far from home. Do you see those 3 stars? Those are how we can find Orion. That's his belt. And there's Ursa Major. We saw those last night through the trees. He pointed further. And do you see those stars make a giant T? That's the Southern Cross. The night in the forest was peaceful. The gentle rustling of the leaves and the soft murmur of the river sang them to sleep. Soon they were fast asleep, dreaming of even bigger adventures ahead. Chapter 5. The Storyteller. Today's going to be incredible, Camilla said. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. Carlos nodded in agreement. Let's see where this map leads us next. They cleaned up their camp and set off. The ancient map guided them towards a range of mountains. The landscape changed as they neared them. The ground became rockier and steeper. The lush wetlands became fields of wildflowers. Carlos gazed up at the mountain peak. It looked so tall. "We've got this," Camilla replied with a grin. "We figured out the river riddle together, remember?" The climb was hard. They scrambled over rocks. Their paws gripped the rough surfaces. At one point, Carlos' paw slipped on loose gravel. It sent a spray of stones down the mountainside. He was so scared, his heart felt like it would jump out of his chest. He clung to the rock until Camilla's strong paw pulled him back. "That was close," he gasped. He could still feel the rock slipping under his feet. Camilla was scared too, but she tried not to show it. "It's okay, just be careful," she said. They finally made it to the top. It took forever. Carlos fell to the ground, too tired to even look around. But then he sat up. They could see everywhere they had been. Their home, the wood, the river. They could even see the lands beyond the wetlands. Carlos opened up the map. "Look, this is the mountain we climbed," he said, pointing. Camillo followed the lines on the map. "The Valley of the Vanished," she read, her voice soft. It sounded like a spooky secret. "That's next," Carlos said, feeling a little excited, even though he was still tired. The climb down was easier. Now they walked through the pretty fields. The field had flowers of all colours and a stream that sang a happy song. It was so different from the harsh mountain. They were ready to rest when something rustled in the flowers. An old tortoise capybara stepped out, his shells shining in the light. "Hello, young adventurers," he said. His voice was like a sleepy wind. "What are you doing so far from home?" "We're following this map," Camilla said, showing it to the tortoise. The tortoise nodded as he looked at it. "Ah, I've not seen this map for many, many years." His eyes studied them from the tips of their whiskers to the tips of their paws. "You must be quite brave to have made it this far." "Wait, I've never seen a capybara with a tortoise shell," Camilla interrupted. "Are there more of you?" "I may be the last of my kind," the tortoise capybara replied. "I have not left here for hundreds of years. This valley is filled with history and legends," it began. "It's my job to watch over it until the next generation of guardians appears." Chapter 6. Legends of the Past. Long ago, this valley was home to the Capybara guardians. They were mythical creatures. They protected these lands. The tortoise's eyes gleamed with distant memories. They were unlike any capybara you have seen. They were wise and powerful. Their fur shimmered like the starry night. Carlos and Camilla listened, amazed by the story. The guardians protected the crystal of harmony. It glowed with a light that mirrored the sun above. This crystal kept balance and peace in the valley. The tortoise looked sad, but bad things happened. A dark shadow came. It wanted to break the peace. It was called the Whispering Wraith, a scary creature. The guardians fought to protect the crystal. Camilla's eyes were huge. "What happened? Is the crystal okay?" she whispered. "The guardians were brave," the tortoise said, "but they lost. The wraith used a magic spell to defeat them, but they hid the crystal. The wraith couldn't find it and disappeared." Carlos thought for a minute. "So, the crystal is still here?" The tortoise nodded. "Yes, it is hidden within the valley. It waits for somebody special to find it. When it is found, things will be peaceful again. Many have searched, but the crystal remains hidden. Its secrets are locked away." Camilla's eyes were huge. "We can find it, Carlos," she squeaked. The tortoise smiled. "Maybe, but don't forget, sometimes the answers are inside you. Legends say a spirit watches over this valley and helps those with good hearts." "Can you give us a clue?" Carlos asked. "Listen to the valley," the tortoise said, "but be careful. There's a darkness here too." Carlos and Camilla thanked him. They couldn't wait to start exploring. The story of the guardians made them feel brave. The air got cooler, the trees taller. Soon they found a hidden place, so beautiful it felt like magic. Sunlight peeked through giant leaves. Camilla jumped with joy when she saw glowing flowers. "Look," she shouted, pointing. Carlos touched the plant with funny leaves. They wiggled and showed a swirly pattern. "This is the best place ever," he said. The flowers flew off like tiny birds. Each step brought a new surprise. There were odd smells. The leaves sparkled. Birds sang new songs. In a clearing, they saw animals unlike any at home. Deer with big horns, rabbits with giant ears. Camilla laughed when chipmunks ran around her feet. They made squeaky noises that sounded happy. Carlos smiled too. This was so different from the wetlands, and so much fun. When the sun started to set, they were tired but amazed. The valley wasn't just pretty, it felt special, like a big story happening all around them. Soon they fell asleep by a babbling stream. The sounds of the valley were like a song. They promised more adventures tomorrow. Chapter 7. Valley of the Vanished. Carlos and Camilla awoke to the sounds of birds singing. "I love sunrise songs," Camilla said softly. "Me too," Carlos said, as he relaxed and studied the map. After eating breakfast of fruits and nuts, Carlos and Camilla said goodbye to their new friends. It was time to travel deeper into the Valley of the Vanished. As they walked, the colours got darker. The air didn't smell sweet anymore, but kind of rotten. Camilla shivered. "Look at that tree," she whispered, pointing. It was big, but the leaves were dead and the ground all dry. "Something's wrong," Carlos said. He frowned and touched the cracked dirt. "We need to find that crystal fast." They saw more dead plants, more empty streams. No birds sang, no animals ran. It was silent and scary. "I don't like this," Camilla whimpered, looking around. "Me neither," Carlos said, but he kept his voice strong. "Let's follow the map. It has to lead us to the crystal." But the map was wrong. In front of them, the path split into two paths, but the map showed the split path and a sharp left turn. But all they saw to the left was a wall of rock. Carlos stared at the map, his fur bristling. "This makes no sense." Carlos was confused. "This can't be right," he muttered. He showed the map to Camilla. She stared at the map. "That's impossible. We're supposed to go this way," she said. She pointed towards the mountainous wall of stone to their left. Carlos and Camilla stood before the stone wall. It seemed to reach all the way to the sky. They felt a mixture of confusion and dismay. The path should be right here, but all they saw was the side of a mountain. Camilla squinted at the rock wall. "Something's weird," she said. She reached out one paw and it went right through the rock. "It's not real," she gasped. "Carlos, the path is hidden." A shiver of excitement ran through her. Carlos took a deep breath, then followed her lead. They stepped through the fake wall and into a secret tunnel. "Awesome," he yelled, his worry forgotten. Camilla giggled. "Told you there'd be magic." The tunnel led up, and finally they found a little cave. Inside was the crystal, but it was dark, not glowing like the tortoise said. Carlos knelt down, his heart sinking a little. "Why isn't it working?" Camilla looked at the crystal, her joy fading. "We found it, but what now?" Chapter 8. The Crystal's Secret. Carlos and Camilla woke up in the cave. The crystal sat there, still dark. A mix of hope and worry twisted in their bellies. "Remember what the tortoise said?" Camilla said. Carlos nodded, trying to remember. Something about the valley and balance. A thought sparked. "Maybe we need stuff from outside." "Yes," Camilla bounced on her paws. "Let's go." They ran, grabbing water, rocks, even flowers the same colour as the crystal. Carlos wasn't sure it would work, but Camilla's excitement made him try. Back in the cave, they put everything near the crystal. The water sparkled, the petals looked pretty. Should we say something? Camilla asked, her eyes wide. Carlos shrugged. Why not? They said a silly little song, remembering the tortoise's stories, and for a second the crystal glowed. Look, Camilla shrieked. Keep going, Carlos yelled. They sang louder, but the glow died. They tried again and again, each time the light flashing, then fading. Their happy voices turned quiet. The sun started to set, and the crystal seemed to laugh at them with its darkness. We did all we could, Carlos whispered. His tail drooped. Tears spilled from Camilla's eyes, but then she sniffed. No, we have to fix this. Carlos looked at her, and something inside him felt stronger. She was right. They'd been through so much. This was just one more problem. We'll figure it out, he said. We always do. Chapter 9. Awakening the Heart of the Valley. The next morning, they stared at the crystal in silence. Camilla murmured, I miss hearing the birds when I wake up. Carlos gave her a startled glance. Wait, the tortoise mentioned the valley's songs. What if the crystal needs to hear the valley? Camilla was excited by their new idea. They had heard the melody of the valley's birds. Camilla began to hum it. The crystal flickered in response. Carlos joined in. Their voices mixed together in a hopeful tune. It's not enough, Camilla whispered. It seems so close, but what if we take the crystal down to the valley? It could hear the sound of the valley itself, Carlos asked excitedly. Maybe we just aren't doing it perfectly. Camilla agreed. Together they carried the crystal down into the valley. They set it down and waited, and waited. A bird as golden as the noonday sun landed on a blackened branch. The tree was twisted by darkness. Carlos and Camilla began to hum the song they had tried before. The bird tilted its head, then puffed out its feathers and opened its beak. The sweetest song filled the air. The crystal glowed, just a little. More birds zoomed in. Their tweeting and chirping joined the sunbird's song. A symphony filled the air. The crystal pulsed with light. Each note made it shine brighter. Then frogs joined in, croaking deep and happy, and butterflies danced in the air. The song got louder and louder, the whole valley humming with it. Boom! Light burst from the crystal, painting the dead land. Green leaves popped onto the trees, flowers bloomed everywhere. Carlos and Camilla gasped. The animals had taken their simple tune and made it beautiful. The magic woke the valley's heart, and now life came rushing back. When the light faded, they looked at each other and beamed. We did it, Camilla shouted. We saved the valley, Carlos echoed. He looked around and smiled at the happy animals. With a little help, flowers bloomed, trees waved new leaves. The valley was alive again. Carlos and Camilla were so proud they could almost burst. They had done something amazing, and they knew even more adventures were waiting. Chapter 10. Guardians of the Wetlands. Their amazing journey to the Valley of the Vanished was complete. They had found the crystal. The valley was healing. Carlos and Camilla were back in the familiar wetlands. They felt happy to see their home, but they kept thinking about their adventures. Look at the dragonflies, Carlos. Camilla pointed at the insects buzzing over the pond. They reminded me of the fluttering leaves in the valley. Carlos smiled. He saw a frog hop off a lily pad, remembering when he had to jump across the river. At home, their family and friends crowded around. They were eager to hear about their journey. Carlos and Camilla were so excited to share their adventure. Camilla described the lush valley of the vanished. Carlos spoke about the wise tortoise. They talked about the crystal and the song of the valley. Their audience listened in awe. The younger one's eyes were wide with wonder. You're like heroes from the old stories, exclaimed one. Camilla laughed. We're just explorers who love adventures. But we did learn something important. We must take care of our world. Carlos nodded in agreement. And all of us have a part in keeping it safe and beautiful. The little ones whispered to each other about being brave and smart. They wanted to be like Carlos and Camilla. The best part was learning how everything in nature works together. It's like a big family, Carlos said. Camilla added, yes, and we have to take care of our family, right? That night, the wise old tortoise appeared as if by magic. Well done, young guardians, he said, with a gentle smile, moonlight shimmering on his shell. Guardians? Camilla asked. Yes, the tortoise replied. You have shown care for our world. Now you are its guardians. You need to protect it everywhere. The siblings looked at each other. They felt excited and a little nervous about this big job. We will try our best, Carlos promised. I know, the tortoise said. Remember, nature's balance is important. Keep learning, keep exploring, keep caring. He turned and walked away. Carlos and Camilla felt a new beginning in their hearts. The next day, they started small. They helped plant new flowers. They showed their friends how to clean the waterways. Everyone worked together. They laughed and shared stories. In the evening, Carlos and Camilla sat by the pond. They looked at the stars. We learned so much, Carlos said, and now we can help our wetlands even more. Camilla's eyes sparkled with dreams. Yes, think of all the adventures waiting for us. Just then, a soft breeze seemed to whisper to them. A soft light flickered deep in the wetlands. Carlos, look, Camilla pointed. I've never seen a light over there before. What could it be? Carlos stared, feeling a tingle run down his spine. I don't know, but it feels like it's calling us. The light flickered. It was like a secret waiting to be discovered. This first journey was done, but a whole new world of mysteries waited. Together, they stood tall. They weren't just adventurers anymore. They were guardians, ready for anything. To be continued.